Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the Ask the Experts Application Modernization and Connectivity Closing Keynote. We have a great lineup of experts joining us live today. We'd like to encourage you to submit questions during the session. To do so, simply click the Q&A icon in the top right of your screen. Our expert panel will answer as many questions as they can live at the end of the session. We would also like to say thank you to our sponsors of the Micro Focus Universe event. Now, let's hear from our experts.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for this final AMC Ask the Experts session. My name is Eddie Houghton, and I'm the Product Director for our Micro Focus mainframe and enterprise products. Now, I'll be your host and co-presenter for today's session, and we have a great set of speakers coming up over the next 60 minutes. Now, as you can appreciate, with the challenges of running a virtual universe event in 3 global locations on the same day, we have recorded the first part of this session, but I'm really excited that we have a live Q&A for the last 15 minutes or so, and I really encourage you to submit your questions during the session. Now, to do so, simply click on the Q&A icon at the top right of your screen and type your questions into the question box. It really is as simple as that. Now, feel free to submit questions during the entire presentation, and this can be about the content you're about to hear, or any of the earlier AMC tracks that you've attended. So, what we'll be covering today? Well, this is the closing keynote. So like previous years, we want to give you a brief taste of some of the things that development teams have been focusing on since we met at last year's Universe event. So we'll set some context and then we'll highlight some of the areas of focus for the next product releases. So as you can appreciate, 45 minutes is not a great deal of time, especially for product managers who just want to talk about their products. So throughout the session, we have put some visual reminders of the demo booths. There you can find some content that actually drills into much more detail around some of the features we'll be talking about. So with that, let's get started, and let me introduce you to my co-presenter on this session, Scott Nielsen.
Thanks, Eddie. Delighted to be here, and a warm welcome to all of you that could join us today. Now, Eddie and myself are responsible for the products and strategy of our COBOL, mainframe and host connectivity portfolios. We're part of a much wider Micro Focus team comprising of hundreds of specialists in application modernization. We have over 10,000 organizations using our technology, which amounts to more than a quarter of Micro Focus's overall customer base. This illustrates just how important you are, not only to our success, but just how important the applications that you work with on a daily basis are in the global economy. The challenges that you face in modernizing these systems are undeniably complex. After all, most of you are working with systems that in one shape or another came into being decades before anyone coined the term digital transformation. But if you look around you at Universe, you will find plenty of examples from organizations with applications just like yours and applications just as complex as yours, who have been able to innovate and modernize and not only achieve their company's DX objectives, but they did so faster by building upon what they already have. Reusing what you have and bridging it with new IT is the very premise of what we do in AMC. And to give us some perspective on the challenges that we're trying to help you overcome, we apply these 3 lenses to our roadmap and strategy. Where you run your applications, how you develop them, and how you innovate. And in the rest of the session, we'll tell you more about recent product innovations in our roadmap in each of these areas and give you a glimpse at new innovation arriving in our next release. Now, the route you take isn't a one-size-fits-all. So back to Eddie to tell you more about how the approach you follow can be designed to suit your specific needs.
Thanks, Scott. Now, the specific manifestation of a modernization project will vary widely based on the objectives of your organization, but the first step in this process is to determine the current and desired future state. And this has to take into account the complexity of the operating environment that you run today. Now, detailed application assessment is vital to understand the business drivers such as strategic importance, cost, and risk of change, versus technical aspects such as application complexity, scale, security, and coupling with other systems. This information can then be used to establish a modernization outcome for every production application, whether this is retaining, rehosting, refactoring, or retiring the application in question. With the right strategy, you can plot the right journey, and underpinning this is the advanced framework of planning and implementation we call the Modernization Maturity Model. The Modernization Maturity Model is a framework of best practices and vital considerations which helps you plan, manage, and execute your modernization projects with greater confidence and authority. But is our approach unique? Well, if you listen to the experiences of Philip van Gorp in an earlier session, you'll know that strategy and planning is fundamental to the approach SD Works are taking. What is unique about our Modernization Maturity Model is that we've used our experience of thousands of customer projects to provide a set of best practices that can guide our customers. Importantly, it also recognizes that each step from 1 to 5 on the diagram shown is not equal in effort, cost, risk, or timescales, and that a move to a purely cloud-native environment may not be the practical destination for all applications. But it all starts with insight and knowledge. If you don't know what you have, if you can't unpick the complexity that's built up over time, if you're struggling with subject matter expertise to unravel business process, or you cannot assess the impact of change, then how can you build out a coherent modernization strategy that allows you to weigh up business drivers with the technical reality of what you're dealing with today? Any modernization strategy without the correct level of insight to support decision making is a plan built on sand. And that's exactly why we have COBOL and Enterprise Analyzer. These are comprehensive and industry standard analysis and visualization tools that are the tip of the spear when it comes to providing application intelligence, right from a whole enterprise 10,000-foot view, right down to the single data file field or table column or even data structure within the code itself. It's been used by hundreds of customers worldwide to better understand their application assets and to better plan their modernization journey, both onto the cloud and beyond. So how does it do this? Well, all application artifacts are built into an intelligent analysis repository that is then available for query. Now, whilst we support a wide range of application artifacts, our system is highly optimized for all flavors of COBOL and PL1. Through visualizations, it allows you to see the architecture and data flow of the application. Sometimes for customers, this is the first time they've seen that. It also provides interactive charts and complexity diagrams, dozens of coding rules for standards, and performance optimizations. These and other capabilities are used in order to understand the layout of the system, collect all the information that is needed, and to then plan and estimate a modernization project. In the case of replatforming or repurposing COBOL and PL1 workloads, it provides essential information. It identifies the scope of the application, what needs to move. It identifies the data that's being used. It provides details of the technologies and third-party dependencies. And it provides a full inventory view outlining any missing files or artifacts. Moreover, it allows you to actually research the impact of making the change itself. So what can you expect in the next releases of COBOL and Enterprise Analyzer? Well, a few highlights include the generation within Enterprise Analyzer of a data package that can be sent to our Fortify and Fortify on Demand products for static security checking of enterprise COBOL applications. We're going to introduce initial support for Micro Focus, COBOL.NET and JVM dialects. We continue to enhance our portability assessments based on our project work, and we've made a significant number of general usability improvements based on customer feedback. So armed with this application insight, let's now take a look at infrastructure modernization.
Now, once you have up-to-date knowledge of your applications and your architecture, modernizing the infrastructure on where you run your application is often the first step for many. In fact, the portability of COBOL and mainframe applications is one of the chief reasons for their very long-term success. Now, while application running costs are always an important factor, today's needs driving infrastructure modernization are equally about enabling agile application delivery and building scalable application architectures by fully embracing what commodity platforms have to offer. And even though we've seen operating system consolidation around Z and Intel or around Windows and Linux, the IT landscape is still regularly shifting and something we always keep our eye on. The virtual machine environments of .NET and Java, which have been accepted for enterprise IT, have seen disruption with the emergence of OpenJDK and .NET Core. We've seen several open source database platforms emerge, and enterprise Linux distributions are now bountiful. So despite the apparent consolidation, there is in fact still a lot going on. With that in mind, it's important to recognize the value of an inherently portable application that's sitting at the heart of your core business systems and enables you to respond to changes in the IT landscape. Our COBOL JVM and COBOL.NET support has been embraced by many organizations, really helping to unlock the potential that those applications have to offer by providing seamless integration with Java and .NET. And in our next release, we'll extend our existing support for .NET Core to enable compilation of COBOL applications to .NET bytecode directly on Linux platforms. When paired with some exciting new development tools we'll tell you about later, the ability to take .NET applications to Linux systems opens up the horizon for exploiting commodity platforms further. Now, talking about platforms and disruptive technologies, containerization has delivered that in heaps. Containers are enabling a high throughput of software from your engineer into the hands of your customers quickly and reliably, and this has not gone unnoticed by our customers. But more so, it opens up public cloud as a viable platform for deployment, and not just for basic infrastructure needs, but for building scalable application architectures. Here's Eddie to tell you more.
Thanks, Scott. Now, platform support is part of the DNA of Micro Focus Enterprise Server. It provides a flexible, platform-agnostic COBOL and PR1 application production environment, allowing you to deploy mainframe applications onto Linux, Windows, Unix containers in the cloud with minimal change. It's our proven solution and the quickest way to move mainframe workload onto the cloud, with literally thousands of customers depending on the reliability, availability, and serviceability that the Enterprise Server platform provides, with the performance required to run even the most demanding of mainframe applications. Now, with this in mind, what are the principles that underpin the R&D investments we continue to make in this solution? Well, firstly, our commitment to proven mainframe compatibility means applications can be replatformed with virtually no change, meaning they can get to the cloud faster. Flexible platform support gives our customers a choice of target platforms, container and orchestration technology, without changing the application itself. And a proven technical blueprint we call the reference architecture defines all the critical elements of a replatform. Combined with the support of a rich ecosystem of technology partners, database providers and integrations, which have been developed over many successful projects, means that critical business systems can move with minimal service disruption and risk to the business. As the move to the cloud has accelerated, we have seen increasing demand to support mainframe workload with significant performance and availability requirements. In our 6.0 release, we made some important capabilities GA. This included scalar architectures with enterprise server instances operating in concert in a performance and availability cluster or PAC. This allows capacity to expand elastically to support higher transaction volumes demanded by even the largest mainframe workloads. We introduced the concept of a scale-out repository to allow enterprise server regions, as part of a PAC, to share and coordinate activity. This repository uses cloud-native services such as AWS, Elasticache, or Azure Redis, and in 7 will be supporting Oracle's Coherence Engine. High availability is not just about participating enterprise server regions. It's also needed for mainframe vSAN and QSAN data. With this in mind, we introduced support for relational database hosted vSAN file formats to support data replication. Initially, we provided support for Postgres Aurora and SQL Server, with DB2LEW following. And in 7.0, we'll add support for Oracle DB. And as more customers deploy their systems using this feature, we are constantly reviewing performance to ensure that this is optimized. The new Enterprise Server Common Web Admin utility is now fully GA and is the go-forward administrative facility that allows you to manage and monitor all Enterprise Server instances from a single web UI. Importantly, these admin functions have been exposed through a series of Java services that allow you to automate many functions and to integrate Enterprise Server into your enterprise operations management environment. Now, if you're looking to learn and become familiar with these features, then we've provided an Enterprise Server Quick Start environment on both AWS and Azure that walks you through setting up, configuring, and using these new capabilities. In 5.0, we introduced support for containerized deployments using Docker, and this support was extended to simplify the use of orchestration using Kubernetes in 6.0. Now, the use of containerized infrastructure offers 3 main benefits. It ensures a consistent software infrastructure for all environments from development to production. It drives better utilization of processor resources for cost optimization. And it simplifies application deployments across multiple different private and public clouds. When deploying applications through Enterprise Server or COBOL Server, Kubernetes can be used to optimize the development and test processes to improve code quality and reduce delivery times. It also works really well when deploying a scale-out production environment using the Enterprise Server Performance and Availability cluster. Using the built-in capabilities of Kubernetes, you can dynamically add and remove pods, the Kubernetes processing unit, as workload varies to maintain the optimum level of application response. These management capabilities and others form part of the software maintenance and application deployment process that allows you to reduce system downtime. If you did not get a chance to see Anka Katya's presentation in the session I did earlier, then I do recommend you look at the on-demand content. In this, he explains how he has deployed one of DXE's financial applications, Vantage One, to Kubernetes, what he learned along the way, and the benefits this provides. In this instance, he is using AWS, but applications can be deployed using your own Kubernetes infrastructure or using services from other cloud vendors such as Azure Kubernetes Service. As well as Anka's session, we've got some great content in the demo zone for you to look at and get some experience of using Enterprise Server in a Kubernetes environment. So let's move on to development process modernization. What is stopping COBOL and P1 application development from being the same as any other language? When do these applications cease to be deemed legacy applications and become just another language for applications providing business-critical services? A lot of the perception of the term legacy revolves around the tools and processes in place to maintain and modernize these applications. Very often, lack of modern tooling is hampering developer efficiency. Limited integration into development pipelines results in disconnected processes and systems that slow the transition to more agile methodologies. Older tooling and limited application documentation and knowledge is compounding the challenge of recruiting new talent into the business. And with testing, this is often manual and error-prone, with limited test capacity and an inability to automate or take advantage of new unit test frameworks. So how can you tackle some of these challenges? The first aspect centers around efficient, agile development tooling for COBOL and P1 applications, which provide the same experience for the developers as their C# and Java contemporaries. Now, whilst we continue to invest in our COBOL and P1 language support, which is constantly evolving, as is our compatibility to mainframe subsystems like CICS, IMS, JCL, and DB2. Our mantra is to provide the best developer experience for COBOL and PL1 developers, bar none, which means that you've come to expect support for the latest Eclipse and Visual Studio-based IDEs, smart editing and background parsing, so compilation errors and how to fix them are available instantaneously, integration into knowledge at the point of change, cross-language debugging support for iterative code walkthrough and error determination, code coverage and application profiling tools to verify that changed code has been executed, unit test frameworks to support the creation, maintenance, and execution of COBOL unit tests as part of a CI process, and lastly, a full test harness that means changes can be fully regression tested prior to checking back into source control. Now, this all supports faster code changes that can be tested by developers earlier and more thoroughly, resulting in higher quality code, which is delivered faster. And we've continued this theme in the coming release. So in that, you can expect to see new visual data flow diagrams to trace data through an application. We've added support for visual debugging of PL1 through Visual Studio, which really is extending support we already had available through Eclipse. We've got closer integration with an analysis repository provided by Enterprise Analyzer to provide functions like get dependencies to view upstream and downstream dependency information. And we have an integrated developer-oriented catalog and spool view within the IDE, as well as simpler ways to update, add, and delete resource definitions. But we recognize it's not just about development tools. It's also about how these tools fit into agile pipelines and tool chains. And this is the reason why we provide enterprise developer and Visual COBOL build tools to support build automation. These tools can be deployed into containers with builds driven through common command lines or automation tools like Maven and MS Build. We've exposed Enterprise and COBOL Analyzer admin functions through REST APIs, which ensures application repositories can be automatically updated in line with source changes being pushed to version control systems like Bitbucket and GitLab. For test systems, these can be spun up in containers through infrastructure as source for faster test execution, test automation, and repeatability. And the new APIs we've exposed in Enterprise Server allow you to drive the creation, administration, and teardown of Enterprise Server regions using the new Common Web Admin service we've provided. And this is the reason why we recognize the requirement to provide support through the increasingly popular VS Code interface, and we'll be covering that in a moment or two. But Scott, with these capabilities now available for COBOL and PL1, how is this helping customers recruit the next generation of talent?
Now, if you've been working in or around legacy systems for any length of time, you'll be no stranger to news and stories about a concern over the availability of COBOL developers. You may even have noticed a couple of big stories in the IT industry press during the pandemic. But while there certainly are challenges here, the issues in these areas are not what most in IT might think. And what they certainly don't relate to is learning COBOL itself. It's got to be one of the easiest programming languages to learn, provided you have the right tools. If you're using development tools dating back to the 1990s, your job in onboarding new recruits will be made exponentially more difficult, and your DX results are likely to match IT from the 1990s era as well. But if you're using the kinds of tools that millions of developers around the planet use on a daily basis and which are now available for COBOL developers, bringing new recruits into the COBOL language is not at all the challenge you might think. In fact, if you have the right tools in place, you will quickly realize the true issue businesses face. And it's an issue which affects any large-scale application, regardless of language. Knowledge and understanding of the application and its architecture and how it supports your business, that is the real challenge. It's not a COBOL language issue at all. At least it doesn't need to be. Our investment in static analysis tools is designed to restore subject matter expertise, and we continue to make further developments in this area. We see it as a fundamental need that spans all modernization projects. In recent releases, we've incorporated these analysis tools directly into the development experience, putting key information right at the fingertips of your engineers and enabling them to gain immediate insights about the code they're working on. Skills issues are really tools and knowledge challenges, and these can be resolved. We take great pride in our products, but none more so than in our development tools, which we use internally ourselves and set a high standard. And I'm delighted to tell you about some new developer tools coming in our next release. Visual Studio Code is a lightweight, fast and multi-platform editor and has been widely adopted by the software development community in general. There are now dozens of extensions available. In our next release, we'll provide support for COBOL and mainframe applications, enabling you to edit, compile, and debug applications directly inside VS Code. What's more, we're looking to make this support as widely available as possible for our existing customers, and you may not even need to upgrade to our next release in order to use VS Code with your existing installation of Visual COBOL or Enterprise Developer. Join us at our product launch to find out more. Now, VS Code isn't a replacement to your Eclipse or Visual Studio toolset. Think of it as an additional tool in your kit bag that you can bring out when you need a light, fast-weight tool. But I'm interested to see how its use inside containers pans out. VS Code's inbuilt support to run inside a container, when combined with the container support that we have for Micro Focus COBOL, means that you can achieve a rich development experience, all operating inside a container without ever installing anything directly on your machine. If you want to see this in action, check out the demo booth. Now, our VS Code story doesn't end here. Back to Eddie to tell you more.
Thanks, Scott. It's great to see some of the investments we're making in VS Code within the Enterprise and Visual COBOL products. And on that theme, I'd like to talk about VS Code and the support we're providing to our ChangeMan ZMF customers. As you might know, Micro Focus recently became a member of the Open Mainframe project. And since then, we've been busy taking advantage of the support provided through the Zowie command line interface by adding in a ZMF-specific plugin. This provides access to ZMF REST APIs through a simple set of command lines. It makes it easy to drive ZMF-based processes in an automated pipeline using scripting languages such as Python, Groovy, and PowerShell. At the same time, we've built a ZMF Explorer tree view extension to VS Code that, when combined with a VS Code editor, allows developers not familiar with ZMF to access and edit mainframe artifacts under the control of ChangeMan. Now we're going to take a quick look at this with Jimmy O'Rourke, who is product manager for our mainframe ADLM products.
Thanks, Eddie. Let's review the new ChangeMan ZMF Explorer extension to VS Code. And you can access the Explorer view by clicking the ZMF icon found in the vertical activity bar. You can see a full representation of the ZMF systems and have the ability to interact with them. Now let's drill down into the tree view for this specific ZMF system. Of course, like any system, there may be hundreds, if not thousands, of packages and components, and this can easily get unwieldy. You can use filters to help narrow the scope. In this example, the filter is inactive, as you can see here. Activating the filter quickly limits the scope and becomes more manageable when we re-expand the tree. You can expand the application, its baselines, and its source libraries. We have a PL1 program and a COBOL program. We pass the source component to VS Code, and it utilizes the language engine that you would have chosen to install in your VS Code system. In this example, we installed the IBM Z Open Editor, and that's what we see here on the right-hand panel. Simply right-click on the component to interact with it. Now let's fast forward to a COBOL component already checked out. When we click on the COBOL file, it retrieves it to the local desktop for editing. We also have the ability to retrieve the copybooks. This enables the language editor to make use of any IntelliSense capability. We'll make a simple change and then save it. Depending on the state of the component, some right-click options may or may not be available. In this example, I can diff the local copy against a version of the package. We'll finish by checking this component back in and then perform the build. This will kick off a batch job on the mainframe to complete it. Finally, we'll run the build listing and notice much of the options are now unavailable since it was already checked in and built. The new ChangeMan ZMF Explorer extension to VS Code helps provide developers easy editing capabilities. It's ideal for users who may not be familiar with ChangeMan ZMF, but need the ability to commit source changes.
Thanks, Jimmy. You can see an extended version of this demo, including both the Zowie command line and VS Code plugins in the demo booths. We'll be looking for customers to help us beta test the early releases of both components, so if you are interested, then please let us know through the chat. Back to you, Scott.
When it comes to application modernization, we follow the same guiding principles for infrastructure modernization by endeavoring to help you modernize without having to dramatically uproot the application or rewrite working code. And modernizing can take very simple forms but have some very powerful results. Think about the propensity of using JSON data for web-based applications. If you're looking to turn a COBOL record into JSON data, you can now do that with a simple API call. And it's equally simple if you want to consume JSON from an external source and populate a COBOL record. These are quick ways to get valuable data in and out of COBOL in a format that other applications can understand, but which don't yet speak COBOL. And looking at this from the other end, you can even now tackle the monolithic architecture that has built up in your application over years, if not decades, and break this down into more consumable units using our refactoring tools. These tools leverage the analysis capability we've been building into our development tools, enabling your developers to quickly slice out important application value for use in new architectures. Now, one way that you might want to use these tools is to create REST web services for your application. And in fact, API enabling COBOL programs has become a common architectural approach for accessing COBOL business logic from a wide variety of sources. And we provide many different approaches that minimize the overall impact on the code. But in this next segment, we'd like to show you an alternative approach that can be used to API enable applications from a completely different perspective. Let me hand you over to my colleague Dorian Hughes.
Thank you, Scott. Let me introduce myself. I'm Dorian Hughes, Senior Product Manager in Host Connectivity. I bet you will recognize where I am from because of my accent. So let's jump straight into it. Scott spoke about API enablement. I would like to take advantage of this to speak about a specific use case of it, service enablement of interactive applications. I said interactive application. What do I mean by that? I mean green screen accessed by terminal emulators such as Micro Focus, Reflection, or Romba. Why would you do that instead of using directly APIs? Maybe because your application is frozen. I mean, you don't develop it actively anymore and it does not have built-in APIs. Or maybe because it's not your application or you don't have the access to the sources. So you cannot develop API. Or simply you don't have the time, the resource, or the wish to develop these APIs. But still, what you need to do is to leverage your competitive differentiator that you built into this application over the last 20 years. What will be the benefits of this approach? You can use these services on different form factors like mobile, web, or whatever new platform will appear. You can also integrate these services into other applications like SAP or Salesforce, for example. Doing this, you can even change the workflow of the green screen application as the user is not interacting directly with the screens. You are leveraging bulletproof green screen application without changing them, so testing will be very limited. You are not taking any risk like rewriting complex business logic or security. With such approach, the typical scope of building services is counted in weeks. So ultimately, all of these contribute to an accelerated time to market for your new applications built on top of this type of services. Let's see from a high-level perspective how it works. Verastream Host Integrator allows to expose services from mainframes, AS400, Unix and Linux, and also Micro Focus Enterprise Server. With the design tool, you can model your services, as I said, changing or not the screen flow. Then these services are published on the server itself to be exposed on different formats, web services or different type of APIs. When a service is going to be invoked, the VHI server is going to connect on the host and perform the user actions in a very optimized way. VHI architecture is designed to support thousands of concurrent connections. Consumer of this application can be business application, mobile, web, CRM. They can also be RPA tools such as Blue Prism or Micro Focus RPA or any others. Another type of consumer is testing software such as Gmeter, Micro Focus UFT, or whatever you want. Now that we saw what Micro Focus VHI is, let's see some use case examples. The first one I would like to speak about is a typical application modernization. This rental company was facing difficulties to add new feature over its 20 years old Unix application, as well as with the new joiners running this application. They choose VHI to reorchestrate the flow of their green screen on a web-based application that allow them to simplify their processes and add features like route optimizations, for example. They boost their productivity by doing so. The second one is about RPA. Automation and green screen is a long love story. Traditionally, automation is done using HLL API or macros on a terminal emulator. And these automations are then brought forward into the RPA tool. Then scaling becomes an issue. What used to work on a desktop is not performing well on a server. This insurance company faced this problem and chose VHI to solve it. VHI performances and the concept of services allow them to keep their infrastructure constrained and efficient. The last one is application testing. Rapid change in the business required continuous development and changes to the key applications. This financial organization chose a service-based approach with VHI because it increased the scale of automated testing while reducing the time needed without additional human resources for testing. With a service-based approach, they were able to leverage their services in other contexts, like performance testing or unit testing. All of these use cases are based on a fundamental idea, reusing existing business logic instead of investing heavily on rewriting it. Before ending up, I would like to highlight two improvement axes that we are currently working on. The first is the containerization of VHI to allow deployment on cloud infrastructure and continue to improve VHI scalability. And the second one is execution proof to certify test result, for example. That's all for me. Thanks for your attention. Scott, it's up to you.
Well, my thanks to Dorian for giving us a new spin on service enabling mainframe applications. Did you manage to guess where his accent was from? Now, just before I hand back to Eddie, let me plug our new book. And I happen to have a pre-production print right here. It's dedicated to using COBOL directly inside the Java virtual machine and aimed specifically at Java developers to help them better help you modernize COBOL systems. Plenty of great content in here, including a COBOL tutorial specifically for the Java developer in mind, through to containerization and API enablement. This will be in print soon, but if you can't wait, make sure you pick up a copy of our first book, which you'll find signposted in the demo booths, and it's free. We've looked at the topic of application modernization through 3 different lenses and share details of recent product innovations and what's coming next. Now, there's certainly value to be found in each of these areas individually, but where organizations have realized the value of their own applications and undertaken an holistic approach that brings all of these together, these have delivered some truly impressive and sometimes astonishing results. Let me hand you back to Eddie to wrap up before Q&A.
Thanks, Scott. So I do hope through the presentation we've whetted your appetite for the next release of our enterprise and Visual Cobalt products. So what can you expect in the run-up to the launch in July? Well, the most critical date is April, and we'll be running the beta program. Now, this is something we do every year for a select group of customers who want to have early access to the latest release of the software. Now, by having access, you'll be able to play with the new features and capabilities we've added, and importantly for us, we'll get valuable feedback on those new functions and the overall readiness of the new release. So if you are interested in beta, then please let Scott or myself know. You can do that in the chat or let us know after the Universe session, and we'd be delighted to sign you up. Now, officially, we make the products GA in June. That's generally available in June. So look out for this, and then you'll see a more formal launch happening in early July. Lastly, I hope you've liked our subtle reminders to visit demo booths throughout this session. There really is some tremendous content that we've assembled for you, which goes into a lot more detail around some of the technical capabilities through technical demos we've provided, whether this is actually agile development, deploying to Kubernetes, a deep dive into the VS Code extensions we talked about, or modernizing COBOL applications. There really is something for everyone there. There's also customer presentations and stories, and particularly those customer stories we couldn't showcase in the main sessions. Plus, there's lots of white papers and other product information for you to browse. So if you've not visited the booth yet, then do make sure it's your final destination after this session. And with that, let's open it up to our live expert panel discussion.
Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I'm delighted to be joined by my colleagues, Scott, Dorian, Guy, Graham, and Jimmy, and we're live with you today to take some of your questions. So we've had lots of questions coming in, and the first question I'd like to ask is one for you, actually, Jimmy. It's about the ZMF Zowie command line we've added in. And the VS Code plugin. Could you tell us a little bit about when that's going to be live and available for people to get their hands on?
Yeah, sure, Eddie. So ideally, I mean, you can see it's even though it's just a 2-minute one, we do have a much larger, broader version in the demo booth that Eddie had mentioned. If you take a look at it, you can see it's pretty much done. There's just a little bit of fine-tuning we have to do. Our goal is to have it by the end of April. I really think we're probably about a couple weeks away. And when we release it, we actually want to do a beta program first, ideally, because one of the things is that this is a relatively new integration for us. And it'd be ideal to get some good customer feedback. And then once we have that, they would go ahead and do a GA release.
Okay, that's great. So just on the same sort of subject, actually, another one that's coming around VS Code, Scott, is the plugin we've added in for Visual Cobalt and Enterprise Developer. Now, you mentioned about getting customers for betas. How do people get hold of this plugin? There's a lot of interest in that.
Great question. I'm glad there's interest. Best thing to do is to reach out to Eddie and myself. And you'll find out, if you watch the replay, you'll find our email addresses and we can get you enrolled in the beta. But when we actually GA the product, we'll probably put the extension in the marketplace, the Visual Studio marketplace. So you'll find it there. And if you install that onto a system that's got either Enterprise Developer or Visual COBOL installed, you're going to get some other features lighting up. So you'll be able to compile, edit, and debug COBOL applications in VS Code, either on Windows or in Linux. So looking forward to seeing that get the light of day. Not long now.
No, that's great. And I think we'll also put it onto the Micro Focus marketplace as well. So if you go onto the AMC section of that, you'll find lots of other utilities that you can actually download and play with, and actually are there to actually enhance your experience of the technology. Switching gears a little bit, questions come in around application knowledge, Guy. How's that actually embedded into Visual COBOL and Enterprise Developer? Did some work in 6. What are we doing now in 7 around that area?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Yes, we've been adding a lot of application intelligence features in the recent releases. We have code visualization, coding standards, smart refactoring or code slicing, as Scott mentioned in the session. And we're adding more capabilities every day. We now added a capability to connect to a central repository of Enterprise Analyzer. So if you have Enterprise Analyzer set up, developers using Visual COBOL and Enterprise Developer can also access application-wide knowledge from Eclipse and Visual Studio. They can get architectural diagrams, access business rules information, dependencies, and much more using this interface, and straight from their development environment. And of course, if you have Enterprise Analyzer and the full client, will provide more advanced analysis capabilities. And I highly recommend you to take a look at the demo booth and see some of the demos or some of those in action.
Great, thanks, Guy. So just some stuff that's come in. Obviously, sparks of interest, Jimmy, in the ZMF Git, ZMF plugin to VS Code, but asking and talking specifically about Git integration. How are we with integrating ZMF into Git or GitHub or other commercial aspects of all?
That's awesome. You know, we actually have a very good demo for one of our solutions architects have put one together for us. It's roughly 20-25 minutes long, give or take, and it's in the demo booth. It's roughly it's a proof of concept, but we have customers who have done that, and we've worked with them on it. It's actually very good, right from beginning to end. It really gives you a very good experience. In fact, I think it's even using IDZ, so it gives you a good experience of what the development role is like, working with Git, and you have changeman in the background, and they really try to do it in a way that's agnostic, so that from the front end, they don't necessarily have to know it's changeman in the back end, but it's very well done. So it's a good one to take a look at.
Excellent, thanks, Jimmy. And yeah, likewise, I think there's lots of things in the demo zone that sort of demonstrate some of the capabilities we've seen today. Looking at some of the support in Enterprise Server, Graham, one of the questions that come in is around the relational databases we support for vSAN-hosted data files. So I know we supported some things in 6.0. What are we anticipating adding in 7.0?
That's a good question, Eddie. In 7.0, we will be adding support for Oracle, which will then mean that we support all of the major databases. So we already support DB2, as you know. We already support SQL Server. And we also support Postgres, which enables us to support cloud variants like Aurora on AWS. So with 7.0, we should have a full house of relational databases, our major vendor.
Great, thanks, Graham. And just a reminder to everyone to keep those questions coming in on the chat. Another one that's come in is around the VeriStream. So we saw some of that talked about by Dorian in the session. Dorian, questions come in is why is the VeriStream solution better for migrating RPA workflows?
Well, I would say it's about two different aspects. The first one would be scalability, and the second one would be reusability. You can build a service with VHI, VeriStream Host Integrator, and reuse it in multiple scenarios. It can be an RPA scenario, it can be a business application scenario, it can be a testing scenario. So one services can be used in multiple places. And with respect of scalability, a server, a VHI server can serve up to thousands of concurrent connections. So it's nothing like a standard RPA solution can do. So I would say scalability and reusability.
Okay, thanks, Dorian. Actually, coming in on the chat, lots of questions around the beta. Again, we spoke a little bit about the beta with respect to the VS Code plugins that we've added. But Graham, perhaps you could just remind the audience of how they can join the beta. And a reminder, the beta is not just for the VS Code plugins, it's also for our 7.0 release as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Eddie. I mean, we have a beta program which covers all of the products. So that's Enterprise Server, Enterprise Developer, the Visual Cobol product range, and Enterprise Analyzer. So full beta, all the product suite that we were releasing in June. Easiest way to join the beta is either put some details in the chat or let one of us that you can see on the screen now know that you want to join the beta via an email or by direct message, and we'll get you signed up. Very keen to do that. Thanks.
Great. That's good. Thank you, Graham. Questions come in around how we actually license Micro Focus technology in a scalable environment. So again, I think probably that has a couple of answers. And maybe I'll take the first one of those, and maybe I'll pass the second part on to Scott, because I'm nice. The first one is licensing in terms of actually how you might buy our software or purchase our software, particularly the enterprise software in a scalable environment or a scale out environment. Is, this year we've actually changed our licensing model to actually have a subscription consumption-based licensing model, which really is in response to customers moving to cloud-based environments and needing the ability to be able to scale those platforms, but also to be able to take advantage of some of the scale out functionality we added into Enterprise Server to allow Enterprise Server regions to scale dynamically. So we introduced a more flexible pricing model based around our subscription model, as I said, to actually facilitate that. If you're talking about specifically how you might license with our license technology, then we are actually changing our licensing technology or licensing approach with 7. We're putting our toe in the water to that. So maybe, Scott, you could provide a little bit more context around that.
Sure, thanks, Eddie. Yeah, happy to cover that. So indeed, in those sort of scalable architectures where you can spin up new instances of your software in the cloud or in orchestrated environments, you want some way of measuring your usage, of metering your usage. So we'll be integrating a standard technology that's provided with a number of Micro Focus products called AutoPass, which will help you understand your usage and measure your consumption of the products. And you'll see, as Eddie was saying, toe in the water in that area in 7.0, where you'll be able to record your usage centrally on a system and be able to see what kind of consumption of our products you're using. And we'll continue to develop that. And the great thing about that is if you're using other Micro Focus products, from elsewhere in Micro Focus, chances are they too will be integrated with AutoPass already or in the future. So you'll be able to manage these using a single licensing solution moving forward. Back to you, Eddie.
Excellent, thank you, Scott. So I think actually that's all the questions that we've got in the chat at the moment. So what I'm going to do then is, before I just close out the session, Scott, is there anything else that additionally you wanted to say before we close out the session?
By all means, how long have we got? No, thanks everyone for joining today. Thanks for everyone on the call and our hosts for today, and looking forward to seeing you on the rest of the sessions. Please make sure you get to the demo booth, because there's a tremendous amount of content there. And I really think once you see some of the technology in action, your things the possibilities will really start to light up. So last thing, I think, please attend those demo booths and take a closer look at the possibilities for your IT.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And yeah, just completely agree with that. And literally after this session, I'll be rushing to the demo booth to take those questions, as was Graham and Guy and the other members on the call today. So with that, just want to thank you again for actually attending the session. I hope you've enjoyed the content. Hopefully next year we'll be live and we can be together and we can run some of these sessions live. So I do hope you've enjoyed the content, and thanks very much for taking the time to attend today. Thank you.